So you have retirement accounts and benefits up in Canada. You have retirement accounts and benefits down here in the States. You're approaching retirement and you're trying to figure out, what does this all mean? Am I actually on track to retire or not? If that sounds like you, then you're in luck. This webinar, we're going to talk about, go through an example of a family that has lived in the US for 20 years, has lived in Canada for 20 years, is now approaching retirement, and they want to figure out, what is their retirement income going to look like. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Brian Haggard. I'm a certified financial planner, chartered financial analyst. I'm the founder of Retirement and Financial. We help simplify your cross-border retirement plan. And one of the question that we answer every single day for our clients is, hey, Brian, when can I retire and what's retirement going to look like, right? And retirement's pretty complicated when you're a cross-border retiree. You have to deal with multiple accounts and benefits up in Canada. You have to deal with multiple accounts and benefits down here in the States. And typically there's not a lot of people around that can kind of help you develop this plan. That's what our goal is today. It's to help you understand and start to put a retirement income plan together using an example of somebody who's lived and worked in both the US and Canada. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. So we're going to look at an example of a family named Mike and Sandy. And you might have saw a webinar recently that we talked about them as well, but we're going to bring them up again. So Mike is 67. He's lived in Canada for 20 years. After the age of 18, he made $50,000 Canadian per year. While he was in Canada, contributed to CPP. He moved to the US and worked for 20 years. He made $100,000 per year in the US and contributed to Social Security. Sandy, his spouse, lived in Canada for 20 years as well. After the age of 18, she made 50,000 Canadian and also contributed to CPP. But when they moved down to the States, she worked minimally here in the States. So far, they have saved $700,000 in a 401k, and they also have $300,000 in an RRSP. That might sound like your situation. If it does, we're going to go through it and figure out, how much income are they going to have in retirement. So the first thing that we like to do when somebody comes to us and they're trying to put together, and we put together a retirement income plan for them, is we want to look at, what is their fixed income? What are the monthly benefits that they're going to get from Canada and the US every single month that they can rely on, right? And traditionally, there's 3 fixed benefits that a family will get. You'll traditionally get your Canada pension plan. Now, you might also get a Quebec pension plan, or I'm sorry, instead you may get a Quebec pension plan if you worked in Quebec instead of one of the other provinces. But for this webinar, I'm just going to refer to everything as the Canada pension plan, as they're pretty similar. You also will probably get an old age security, OAS, from Canada as well. It's, by the way, probably the benefit that most people miss out of all of this. So it's important that you kind of realize if you do qualify for it. But you'll also probably get an OAS benefit. And then down here in the States, you'll in all likelihood qualify for a Social Security benefit as well. These are the 3 benefits that this family will qualify for. Now, if you might also have a company pension as well, that would be fixed income. You might have multiple company pensions. I was just dealing with a family last night, and we found out between both of them, they're going to have 9 sources of retirement income, fixed income, from their various pensions, plus the different fixed benefits from Canada and the United States. So this can get a little onerous, because a lot of times both spouses will qualify for all of these benefits. So now all of a sudden, if you're married, you're looking at least 6 sources of fixed income in retirement, which is a good problem to have. It's just now we have to put it all together. So let's start to add these together. Now, I've done a YouTube video already titled How Much Should You Expect to Collect from Canada Pension, OAS, and US Social Security. I really get into the numbers a little bit deeper on that video, and I'd suggest checking it out. But what we did is we ran this scenario and we looked at how much would somebody get from Canada Pension if they worked there for 20 years. How much would they get from OAS if they lived in Canada for 20 years? And what would their US Social Security be if somebody lived there, worked there for 20 years, made $100,000, and then they also had a spouse that no longer worked and so, or did worked very minimally in the States. And we added all those together. So you'll see your Canada pension plan at age 65 for both spouses combined would be about $1,360 if you lived in Canada for 20 years and contributed to CPP for 20 years. That'd be about a little over 1,000 US at today's exchange rate. The old age security at age 65, if you were a Canadian resident for 20 years after the age of 18, would be 714 combined for both spouses, which would be $536 a month roughly in US dollars. And then the US Social Security benefit, the full retirement age at age 67 is what we were using for this example. In both for the workers benefit and a spousal benefit would be roughly $3,668 a month. Again, that assumes that one spouse worked for 20 years earning $100,000 and the other spouse didn't work at all or very minimally. So you can start to see that these numbers start to add up a bit. You know, I've had a lot of clients, they've left Canada, gosh, 20, 30 years ago, but they look at it and they go, well, yeah, I probably don't have much from OAS, or it's been so long, I don't even know, right? And then you start to add it all together and you're looking at, you know, over $5,000 a month from both the US and Canada. And that's a really good starting point. And your situation might be, well, hey, I live on $3,000 a month. I'm already good, right? We'll start to look at that a little bit more so you have an idea of what your expenses are. But this is, again, traditionally what somebody would expect to collect in that example that I showed you previously. Now, your income might be higher or lower depending on how long you worked in both countries, if you worked more in the US versus Canada, if you earned more than the example we gave here, but this is a really good starting point that you might expect to receive given the example that we gave you. So we kind of know what your fixed income will look like. It's not necessarily easy to get all those numbers, but we can get those numbers. For a lot of us, the fixed income doesn't pay all of the bills though, right? A lot of times we need to have more than the 5,000 or 6,000 that we might get from fixed income. And we haven't even started talking about taxes, which we'll get into in a minute. That's all pre-tax income, right? Now what I want to do is I want us to talk about the account withdrawals. Most of us have to take money out of our retirement accounts to fund the rest of our retirement. So there's various amount of retirement accounts that you might have up in Canada and the US. There's RSPs in Canada. There's locked-in accounts or LIRAs in Canada. There's RPPs in Canada. You might even have a TFSA up in Canada. And here in the States, there's also a lot of accounts. There's 401ks, IRAs, 403bs. There's Roth IRAs, 401ks, right? You might even have a brokerage account, right? There's a lot of different retirement accounts. I'm trying to make this kind of as easy as possible and just really say that we have two retirement accounts, which we don't see that often, but it is possible. We have one RSP, or maybe you have multiple RSPs that equal 300,000 Canadian. And we have a 401k here in the States that is 700,000 US dollars. And ultimately, we want to answer the question, what does this mean for income in retirement? So first and foremost, in this example, I'm going to use a really safe 4% withdrawal rate. Now, you might have heard about the 4% withdrawal rate in the past. The 4% withdrawal rate is a very safe withdrawal strategy. What the strategy is that you withdraw 4% of the starting value of your retirement accounts, whatever your retirement accounts are on the day that you retire. So for example, let's just say for easy math, you had $1 million in retirement accounts. The safe withdrawal rate would be $40,000 per year, or 4% of those numbers. Now, every single year, that withdrawal rate goes up, or the amount that you withdraw goes up based on whatever the inflation rate is, right? So if the inflation rate was, we'll just say 3%, your $40,000 that you took out the first year would then go up 3% that second year. And so in each year, the withdrawals would increase as inflation increases. Now, why is this such a kind of a common number that financial advisors will use? Now, the reason it is the 4% safe withdrawal rate has been back tested to never have run out of money over a 30-year period. Now, that does assume you have a investment allocation of 60% stock and 40% bonds. The withdrawal rate can vary based on your investment strategy. It certainly could be a lot different, could be a lot lower potentially if you're all in cash, for example. But they've went back, they've said, okay, no matter what year you've retired, you could have retired the day before the Great Depression, you could have retired in the end of the 1960s, right before the inflation, all the inflation in the 70s. You could have retired in any of these years, and you never would have run out of your money over a 30-year period using the safe withdrawal rate. That's not always, our clients don't always look like that. Sometimes we recommend more or less based on their situation, but that's what I want to use as this example, at least, because it's easy. So a couple options that you have with your 300,000 Canadian RSP. What are your options? One option is that you can draw directly from the RSP. You have a lot of flexibility in doing that. You can withdraw 100,000, you can withdraw all of it, you can withdraw 10,000, right? You have a lot of flexibility in how much you take from the RSP, but Canada will withhold 25% from whatever you withdraw, and you still have to count that on your US tax return. But the money that Canada withholds will count as a foreign tax credit to help you out here in the States. The other option is that you can take your RSP and convert it to a RIF. And if you do that, you can traditionally withdraw up to 10% of your RIF at that point. In this case, it'd be 30,000 Canadian per year. And the benefit of this strategy is that Canada will only hold 15%. So for lower income folks, for folks that are in lower tax brackets, having that lower Canadian tax withholding is a huge benefit to them. And again, in this example, we're just going to assume that they do that. A lot of our clients do that. There are some reasons to maybe withdraw all of your RSP at once and just be done with it. But in this example, we're just going to say they're going to convert it to a RIF, withdraw up to 10% per year, and they'll have 15% Canadian withholding. So what does that mean for you, right? So we start off with 300,000 Canadian. We take out a 4% withdrawal, which is 12,000 Canadian. We then have the Canadian tax withholding, which is 15% of that. So we have to subtract $1,800. That money goes directly to Canada. We also have, we're assuming we're going to move that money down here to the States. We have an exchange rate hit, right? And I'm using 0.75 as the exchange rate today. So potentially a little bit worse than that, but that's a pretty good average. So the exchange rate hit would be about 25.50 Canadian. So after the Canadian tax withholding US dollar amount that we would have from the 300,000 Canadian would be about $7,650. So we'll use that for this number. The other account is your IRA or 401k. A little bit easier to do this math. Again, the starting value was $700,000. We multiply that by 4% for that 4% annual withdrawal, and we come up with $28,000, right? So let's put that together from our RSP, but in this case, we actually converted it to a RIF. You're going to get $7,650. And from your 401k, you're going to get $28,000. Now, this isn't apples to apples because the 401k is pre-tax. We still have to determine a tax rate, which we'll talk about next. The RIF accounts for the most part should be after tax. So the total annual income from these two sources would be $35,650, which if you did this monthly would give you about $3,000 per month, or just under $3,000 per month on these two sources of income, on a 300,000 Canadian plus $700,000 401k here in the States. Now, that's all great, but we have to take into account taxes, right? So sure, you might be going, wow, that's a lot of income. Well, Uncle Sam still wants their part of the pie as well, right? So let's figure out what your actual tax liability is going to be. So again, here's kind of the pre-tax amount that we looked at, right? Your Canada pension plan for the two individuals would be a little over $1,000 a month, which would be a little over $12,000 per year. You'll have your old age security, a little over $500 per month, or $6,400 per year. You'll have your US Social Security, which you can see is substantially higher than the Canada benefits at about $44,000 per year. By the way, you might be asking the question, yes, I did take into effect the WEP reduction on this. If you don't know what the WEP reduction is, I don't want to get into it all in this video, but it is possible your Social Security benefit will be reduced because of your Canada pension. I did take that into account for this, by the way. So your US Social Security would be a little over 44,000. You have your RIF withdrawal, which is 7,650, and your 401k withdrawal, which is $28,000. We put this all together and we're looking at almost $100,000 a year of income, pre-tax income, $98,428. You might be, again, thinking to yourself, that's a good amount of income. Or maybe you're thinking that's not enough for me to live on. And we'll talk about that here in a minute as well. So I put this into, we do tax planning for all of our clients. I use a tax planning software that's very robust. I put this into my tax planning software and figured out that somebody with these benefits, their total pre-tax total income would be $98,428. Now, I know I'm going to get some comments from people going, hey, the taxes don't look right. The reason that they may not look right if you are doing the calculation on your own is Social Security, CPP, and OAS are taxed as Social Security here in the States, which is tax favored compared to other types of income. So the taxes may actually look lower, and they are lower than if you count that as other sources of income, which is a mistake I see all of the time that people make. So in this case, their total income is $98,428. The total federal taxes, and also I did include the foreign tax credit they will receive from Canada on the RIF withdrawal. Their total federal taxes would be $5,560, which gives us a total after-tax income of $92,868. And what that means for us is that your retirement paycheck, which is something that I always take a look at, is your retirement paycheck after tax should be about $7,740 in this example. So the question is, can you live on $7,740 per month? And now I want to talk about that, because what a lot of people will tell me when they first look at this, they'll go, absolutely, I can live on $7,740 per month. We probably spend $2,000 or $3,000 a month, right? We spend $500 on groceries and $500 on utilities, and yeah, we'd be fine. What I really want to do, though, is a lot of times people way underestimate what they're spending in retirement, and I want to look at that next. So let's talk about what your income needs actually are. We have clients that have millions and millions of dollars in savings, $5, $10 million plus in retirement accounts, but they're spending $20, $30, $40, $50,000 a year. We have other clients that have maybe a few $100,000 in savings, but might only be spending a couple $1,000s per month, right? Everybody's a little bit different. So it's really important to understand what your income needs are. So this is what I always like to do to figure out how much you're currently spending. The truth of the matter is, most of us spend what we make. Most of us take whatever our after-tax paycheck is and we spend that. Now, this is your after-tax, after 401ks, after everything is deducted from your paycheck, right? You might be making $200,000 a year, but you might be saving 30,000 into a 401k. You might have 10,000 a year in insurance. You might have, all of these other expenses, plus all of your taxes. Your $200,000 per year may, when you actually get your paycheck, only look like, $7,000 or $8,000 per month, right? After tax, after net. So I always like to look at somebody's paycheck, figure out what is their net pay currently. Then we like to look and figure out, is there any expenses that we know will go away in retirement? And we also want to add back expenses that we know will increase in retirement. So let's look at that. So here are expenses that will typically go down in retirement. Savings right now, if you're putting money into like an IRA outside, like not, this isn't a 401k. 401ks get deducted before you get paid. But if you're then taking your paycheck and putting additional $500 or $600 a month into an IRA, well, you're not going to be doing that savings anymore in retirement. So we can subtract that expense or that savings rate out. Maybe you're going to have a mortgage that's paid off in retirement. That would be an expense that goes away. Maybe your kids are about to graduate from college, and that's a big expense right now. Hopefully that will be an expense that goes away. These are known expenses that go away. These are not just kind of, you know what, I think we might spend a little bit less on groceries in retirement. The truth is, most people don't. In all likelihood, you are going to spend the same amount in retirement, if not more, as what you were doing pre-retirement. So these are some expenses that may go away. There's also some expenses that will probably go up for you. One of those is healthcare. Right now, in all likelihood, you're paying for your healthcare with pre-tax dollars out of your paycheck. And so that paycheck that you're receiving is after healthcare has been paid for. That changes in retirement. Typically in retirement, you're going to be paying for these healthcare expenses out of pocket. That's an expense that we have to add. A lot of our clients actually spend more in retirement because they have more time. They might travel more. They might want to golf more or fish more or travel more to do bird watching, right? So we have clients that have a lot of different activities and hobbies, and these are maybe additional expenses that they're going to have in retirement. So it's important that you kind of maybe add those back, those goals that you might be able to accomplish that you weren't able to accomplish before. I even have a client that decided to go back to college and get an additional degree in retirement. So some people have those additional expenses in retirement. So can Mike and Sandy retire? So let's just look at their situation. So Mike and Sandy, we looked at their situation. They currently have a net paycheck. Their paycheck that they get after all of these expenses are deducted is $6,000 per month. But they're also putting an additional $500 per month in an IRA in a savings account. That money we can subtract because that's money that they're not going to need to continue to save in retirement. But they have some goals to travel a little bit more. They're already travelers, but they want to travel a little bit more. So we've added an additional $500 per month or $6,000 a year in travel costs. And then also we got to add back healthcare costs as well. Now, Mike and Sandy are going to be, they're 67, so they're Medicare age. So their healthcare needs might be less than other folks who are going to retire prior to 65 and have to pay for their own healthcare prior to Medicare kicking on. But usually kind of a good, and maybe this is even a conservative estimate, but you're probably are going to pay about $800 to $1,000 per month for Medicare in retirement for a family of two. So we start with 6,000, but their total monthly income need is going to be about $7,420 per month. So can they retire? Well, we looked at it in their case, their monthly after-tax income, when we take into account all of their Canadian benefits, plus their withdrawals from their retirement and US benefits, plus their withdrawals from their retirement accounts. And it looks like they can retire. They'd have plenty to retire in this. Well, not plenty, but they look like they're about $300 positive. So in this situation, yes, it does look like Mike and Sandy can retire. They might be cutting it a little bit close. They may decide they want to work a little bit more, but in their case, it does look like they're going to retire. Now, a couple things that you do want to consider is how much of those expenses, right? We looked at it here and said, okay, they have about 7,420 of expenses per month that they're going to have. Well, how much of those expenses are fixed versus variable? If a big chunk of your retirement income expenses are your mortgage, because you have a high mortgage still in retirement, that can be a little bit trickier because then all of a sudden when unknown expenses pop up, it's hard for you to reduce expenses like other folks were. If a lot of your expenses are variable, maybe a lot of it's non-discretionary or just discretionary spending, things that you enjoy to do, spend things on, and not so much on fixed costs, you may have a little bit more of a comfortable retirement because it's easier for you to adjust as conditions might be adjust. You also want to account for unknown expenses. Putting together the spreadsheet or this seminar webinar yesterday, and just so happened that we live on a well system here in Michigan, and our well stopped working. And so we were without water for 2 days. And when you are without water for 2 days, you pay whatever you can to get your water turned back on. And so over $4,000 later, we finally have running water. Things like that happen a lot, especially if you're a homeowner. Furnaces can go out, wells can go out, things can happen. Maybe not wells, depending on where you live. So you want to account for those unknown expenses. You want to have a buffer in your retirement budget for those unknown expenses. Overall, I hope this was helpful. I know that cross-border retirement planning can be complicated. Here at Retirement and Financial, we specialize in cross-border financial planning. We are a fee-only financial advisors. There's no sales, no commission. If you're interested in learning more or scheduling a complimentary consultation with us, you can learn more about our services, what the costs are on our website. You can also go and schedule a virtual meeting at our website as well. If you're in Michigan, you could come into our office. A lot of our clients are, so a lot of our clients will just schedule a virtual meeting with us. Thanks again for your time today, and please let us know if you have any questions. Bye now.